And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas, gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is July 27th, the 208th day of this year. Only 157 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll start a new one. Well, on this date in 1789, President Washington signed the act establishing the Department of Foreign Affairs, now called the State Department. 1866, Cyrus Field completed laying the first successful permanent transatlantic telegraph cable. And in 1953, the Korean War armistice was signed at Panmunjom, ending 3 years of fighting. It's also National Creme Brulee Day and National Scotch Day in the United States. So get yourself a creme brulee and a bottle of scotch and just have a good old time. And let's see what stories we have in the news on this date. Well, NBA stars ripped socialist mayor Zoran Mandami as the mayor playing president after the Netanyahu video aired. New York City Mayor Mandami remarks about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu drew criticism over the weekend from a somewhat unlikely source. Milwaukee Bucks forward Kyle Kuzma, who mocked the Democratic Socialist as mayor playing president. Responding to the mayor's video on X, the 9-year NBA veteran suggested Mandami was more concerned with appearances than he was in governing, labeling the mayor's talking points as performative. According to Kuzma, this is 2026. People cosplaying as things they don't have the authority, talent, or the track record to actually be, just to create content. Well, that response came after Mandami released a video calling for the arrest of Netanyahu under an international criminal court warrant ahead of the United Nations General Assembly. The founder playing operator, the content creator playing one-on-one, thinking he's a pro. The role of right thing because what out seemed to have a bit here. I'm sure it wasn't. Well, everybody's auditioning, he said. Nobody's building. We're raising a generation that's learning the reward isn't in doing the thing, it's in looking like you did the thing. And that's exactly what Mandami's in the process of trying to do. Why the people of New York City elected a socialist is anybody's guess. It certainly raises a lot of questions about the people of New York. Iran issued a second warning to Ukraine after an alleged Caspian Sea attack, and we paused our strikes. Iran has rejected talks as President Trump pauses a 2-week bombing campaign and weighs carrying out a major blow. Iran said on Monday it wasn't seeking renewed talks with the U.S. and remained in control of the Strait of Hormuz after President Trump paused a 2-week bombing campaign that military commanders reportedly said was running out of targets. We've pretty much flattened everything in the country. Iranian Foreign Minister spokesman Ismail Beghai rejected the White House's claim that the pause was intended to create room for negotiations. Iran said it halted its retaliatory attacks only as long as Washington refrains from launching new strikes. The Iranian state media also claimed 6 ships are turned back after attempting to cross the strait without Tehran's permission, signaling the bombing campaign that failed to loosen Iran's grip on that critical energy route. 13-night U.S. operation struck military targets, bridges, and tunnels. There can't be much left, and they don't seem to understand. They are not in charge. Nickelodeon child actor crashes out, reveals a bleak reality of residual checks from the sitcom. Nickelodeon actress Jennifer Hyatt Ted Maury pulled back the curtain on life after child star status. She's 37. Warren social media follows her this week about a crash out incoming as she sifted through residual checks from her time with the popular kid sitcom Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. If you were on a TV show 20 years ago and a random envelope still shows up in your mailbox, she cautioned the video before revealing the small sum she gets. Time to open my latest Ned's Declassified residual checks. They're one of the weird parts of being a child actor that people are always curious about. So I figured I'd open one up with people watching. Who's ready to find out if I'm buying coffee or a yacht? Holding a thick stack of unopened mail, she explained her woes with the television world. Said, I've been procrastinating to open this for months because it's a strange thing. Some of these could be a penny, some of these could be $5. After opening a piece of mail and detailing the episode she was receiving a check for, she revealed a 2-cent paycheck. She said, all of 2 cents. All this paper, I'm just littering in my car. I know hard times, the economy is in the crapper. Keep it, I don't want it. She continued opening mail where she received a 63-cent check. Another check for video projects and school clubs returned a 3-cent payment. She said, don't come with me for throwing away a nickel, she said. Now I get it, it's been a long time. I'm surprised I'm getting anything but 3 cents. It costs you 75 cents to send the envelope. Well, New York circus performer airlifted to a hospital after colleagues' arrow misses a target and hits his neck. A circus performer is airlifted to a hospital after his colleague missed her target and hit him in the neck with an arrow while performing in New York, according to authorities. The incident happened as Edwin Curvo Rangel, 38, and Ana Daza Tavera, 42, were performing at the Orange County Fair in the town of Wallkill at about 9:30 p.m. on Friday. That's according to New York State Police. Curvo Rangel and Daza Tavera are married, according to News 12. Two performers from Wisconsin were doing a stunt where Daza Tavera shot an arrow at a foam target that Curvo was holding, according to police. The arrow struck and injured Curvo Rangel. He was airlifted to Westchester Medical Center in stable condition. No other injuries are reported. Ringmaster for the traveling show company, Circus Mercia, later said the arrow hit Curvo in his neck. When she shot the crossbow, it caught him in the neck, according to ringmaster Benjamin Jackson. That's a great way to end a family argument. Just shoot him with an arrow. Well, a federal judge rules BBC can't relitigate Capitol riot and bombshell Trump lawsuit. The judge limited the BBC from relitigating January 6th in the Trump lawsuit over a misleading documentary edit. Federal judge last week drew a sharp line around President Trump's $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the BBC, ruling the broadcaster can probe how Trump's January 6th speech was understood by the public, but can't relitigate the riot in the U.S. Capitol itself. The ruling was handed down to U.S. Magistrate Judge Jurliet as the BBC faces continued scrutiny over a 2024 panorama documentary about Trump's speech on January 6th. The documentary, titled Trump, A Second Chance, was subsequently labeled as misleading by critics who noticed it omitted Trump's call for supporters to protest peacefully at the Capitol. The documentary stitched together remarks Trump made nearly an hour apart during his address and made it appear as if he had told his supporters to fight like hell down at the Capitol. Comments were actually out of context, showed up before the Capitol riot that day. Well, it's going to be a while before that lawsuit comes to an end. Now, there are 3 dead and 2-year-old boys among 500 injured in a Seattle Center mass shooting. Suspects were taken into custody and police were searching for a second suspect after 3 people were killed and 4 others were wounded Sunday in a mass shooting at the Seattle Center, according to Mayor Katie Wilson. Wilson called the shooting an act of horrific violence. Impacted families are living through the worst moment of their lives, and an entire community is trying to understand how a gathering built around culture, connection, and joy ended in gunfire. Nobody should have to weigh the risk of being shot before attending an event, gathering with friends, or experiencing their city. Police and emergency crews began arriving at the center shortly after 6 p.m. The venue was hosting the Bite of Seattle Food Festival over the weekend. And somebody decided it was time to shoot the place up. Well, America and Japan are building the alliance China fears. These days, nobody does it better than Japan, especially from an American alliance perspective. They're standing up to Chinese and Russian aggression and securing reliable supply chains. Japan and America are working together better and with more urgency to coordinate and cooperate in the alliance in the world. In fact, Japan has pushed all its chips into the middle of the table to make an enormous existential bet on America. It's time to say out loud what policymakers already acknowledge behind closed doors. For the U.S., Japan has become the new special relationship in the world's most important region. Americans always have a unique fondness for the United Kingdom, where our history, values, and bond of shared bloodshed and alongside family ties will keep us forever close. And our intelligence relationship, which has no parallel in the world, will continue to make our alliance enormously beneficial to both Washington and London. But in terms of pure military and economic value, the UK alliance provides far less than Japan. And given London's recent economic pandering to Beijing, it also become a far less reliable ally across the Indo-Pacific. Well, Hilaria Baldwin flaunts a fit figure in a bikini as fans marvel at the mother of 7. Alec Baldwin's wife showed off her physique in a skimpy bikini while sharing workout tips with her fans on Instagram. In a video she shared on Saturday, 42-year-old yoga instructor who shares 7 children with her husband Alec Baldwin, who's 68, was seen demonstrating glute training exercises in a bathroom. She sported a red twist front halter bikini top, which she paired with red and white floral high-waisted bottoms. Baldwin star accessorized with a silver necklace and a diamond cross pendant and diamond stud earrings. Back in the bathroom, let's work the butt. This carves out the space between the butt and the back of the legs. 5 to 10 of each, 3 sets, she wrote in the caption. Well, it's fascinating how many folks are into working out these days. Popular pastime sending more Americans to the ER with devastating injuries. The Detroit, Michigan metro area is reporting an uptick in serious incidents related to electric bikes, or e-bikes as they're called. Police are seeing a rise in e-bike crashes. Doctors say they're treating a growing number of related injuries. These incidents have reportedly led some communities to seek restrictions on e-bikes or to ban them altogether. Some of those e-bikes can reach speeds up to 28 miles an hour, increasing the potential of severity of crashes on sidewalks and streets. Fox News Detroit spoke with emergency room Dr. Robert Sherwin of the Detroit Medical Center, reported seeing everything from minor injuries to major trauma related to e-bike incidents. We see them around here all the time, whipping up and down the streets. These Class 3 bikes are probably more like motorcycles, he said. They travel up to 28 miles an hour, and a lot of riders aren't expecting that. Might not be experienced in that. These e-bikes are heavier than regular bikes, and they travel much faster, but the human body doesn't change just because a bike has a motor. Local bike shop owner John Hughes suggested a real issue was always between sharing the road with cars, according to Fox News Detroit. Cars aren't looking for bikes. People don't expect bikes as a form of transportation. That's where it gets dangerous. Well, we've seen a number of incidents here. Well, this red state strengthening its grip as America's next economic heavyweight. The race to become America's next economic heavyweight may already have a front runner. The latest internal revenue migration data shows billions of dollars in taxpayer wealth flowing into Texas. While census figures show the state's largest metropolitan areas continue to outpace much of the country in population growth, strengthening a decades-long shift in America's economic center of gravity. What's more, Texas isn't relying on a single boomtown. Dallas-Fort Worth added more residents than any metropolitan area in the country over the past year, while Houston, Austin, and San Antonio also ranked among the nation's fastest-growing metros. That unusual breadth gives Texas multiple engines of economic growth, providing businesses with larger labor pools, diversified industries, and a broader customer base in states anchored by a single dominant city. Well, certainly, there's no question that Texas is growing faster than any other state in the country. Well, the DNC chair, Ken Martin, threw a phone at an aide's desk, faced HR complaint and a sign of fraying nerves. Stressed out Democratic National Committee Chairman Ken Martin faced a former human resources complaint after allegedly throwing his phone at a junior aide's desk at the party's Washington headquarters in early July. The New York Times reported Sunday as financial concerns and internal tensions placed his leadership under scrutiny. The cause of the alleged outburst remained unclear, but one DNC source briefed on the episode described it as worsening conduct and just unacceptable. This is a spiraling behavior, the source told Notice. Times described the show of frustration as a sign of Martin's fraying nerves. Times cited 6 people familiar with the incident, none of whom witnessed it firsthand. The accounts differed on how forcefully Martin threw the phone, but the newspaper reported it landed on the aide's desk while Martin was reprimanding the staffer and led to a former HR complaint. Well, unfortunately, the Democrats have a lot to be concerned about, and it's starting to have a major impact. Russia pulled back from the Arctic for now. NATO has to act before those troops return. While serving as Infantry Battalion Brigade's operation officer in Alaska, this one individual learned that the Arctic is among the most unforgiving battlefields on the planet. Aircraft can deliver soldiers to remote areas, but they can't improvise roads, fuel, and supply units once the fighting begins. In the extreme cold, poor preparation kills soldiers as surely as enemy fire does. That lesson returned as studies were conducted of recent satellite imagery from Russia's far north. Advanced air defense systems disappearing from established Arctic positions even after Russia pours concrete from barracks and depots closer to Finland and Norway. Well, having spent several years in some of the hottest regions on the planet and know the problems we had there, I don't doubt that there's a lot of problems caused by the cold as well. Well, Hurricane Genevieve rapidly intensifies into first Category 5 hurricane in the Eastern Pacific since 2024. It's also the Northern Hemisphere's first major hurricane for the 2026 season across both the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific basins. Genevieve strengthened into the first Category 5 hurricane in the Eastern Pacific basin since Hurricane Christy in 2024, as it intensified this morning. Hurricane Genevieve is also the Northern Hemisphere's first major hurricane of the 2026 season. The storm is currently barreling west-northwest across the open waters of the Eastern Pacific with maximum sustained winds of 150 miles an hour. And I don't care who you are or where you are, that's some serious wind, folks. Genevieve expected to remain well out to sea with no expected impacts on land. But it is bringing swells to parts of southern Baja California and southwest coast of Mexico that are causing life-threatening rip currents, according to the National Hurricane Center. According to Fox Forecast Center, the storm is moving into a region highly conducive to development as the wind shear is expected to decrease while ocean temperatures continue to rise. Well, inside Florida's $85 million James Bond-inspired mansion that was built to make a billionaire's drop. The turnkey estate includes designer purses in the closet and attracting high net worth buyers fleeing blue states. And there's a lot of those. Just south of the intersection of two main roads in western Delray Beach, Florida, is a hidden community filled with properties designed to make a billionaire's jaw drop. Behind heavily guarded gates, patrolled around the clock by former military veterans and Navy SEALs, is a New standard of American luxury quietly taking shape. That Stone Creek Ranch, where actor Mark Wahlberg, hedge fund billionaire Steve Cohen, and Rockstar Energy founder Rush Weiner, and NFL star Khalil Mack call themselves neighbors. Fox News Digital got an inside look at the enclave's newest flagship listing. It's called Via Skyfall. $85 million James Bond-inspired estate, complete with hidden passages and a poker room and a rainforest-style spa and a 2.5 private acres. Literally the most prestigious address in South Florida right now. What's so extraordinary about the community is that, like you said 8 years ago, it's a hidden gem. Not many people knew about it. And it's truly evolved in terms of the level of A-list celebrity clients who are buying there. Business and entrepreneur leaders have already bought, and also the quality of what they're now able to offer in the community, according to Douglas Elman, Florida Executive Director and Listing Agent, Sonata Adzern. He's already sold multiple homes in that neighborhood. That's according to Fox News. You got that kind of money, I guess you need something unusual to spend it on. Prince William likely livid over Meghan Markle's tasteless photos at Princess Diana's home, according to experts. She shared photos of her children, Princess Elizabeth and Prince Archie, frolicking around the late Princess Diana's childhood home, and experts are calling Markle's move tasteless. This week, Markle crafted an Instagram post about the family's recent UK visit. She captioned her post, "Summer Holiday," and one of the images showed Prince Harry with his kids walking on a grassy path with hedges and large trees. And photos believed to be taken at Althorpe, the Spencer family's ancestral estate. In the photo, Archie and Harry are carrying bouquets, which seemingly suggests they visited Diana's burial site, which is on an island in the middle of her family estate. Well, Hillary Fordovich, British royal experts, told Fox News that Prince Harry's older brother, Prince William, is likely livid by Markle's photos. You know, sometimes I think these experts just generate these disagreements. I would see nothing wrong, personally, with photos of this sort. And finally, skipping sleep may pack on the pounds faster than you think, according to a new study. Regularly cutting back on sleep can cause the number on the scale to creep up, according to new research. A study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine found that adults who got about 90 minutes less sleep each night for 6 weeks gained roughly a pound on average compared with periods when they got enough rest. Well, weight's going to go up, weight's going to go down. You never know. Spin the dial and see what you get. On that note, let's see what our story is going to be about today. Because we've been talking about a lot of off-the-wall topics over the last few weeks. Today, we're going to talk more about some of the greatest hoaxes in history. You know, if you remember, back in 1991, the world was glued to CNN's 24-hour coverage of the Gulf War. That was a new kind of real-time journalism that brought war into the living rooms like never before. Network correspondents, led by Bernard Shaw, Peter Arnett, and John Holloman, were hailed as brave pioneers broadcasting live from Baghdad as bombs fell around them. But a number of years later, a number of conspiracy theories came to light. What if some of these dramatic live war zone segments weren't filmed in Baghdad at all, but from a CNN studio in Atlanta? There was a claim made by not only skeptics, but a number of whistleblowers as well, that at least some of the CNN reports during the Gulf War were actually faked, using blue screens and sound effects and scripted panic to simulate danger. I remember there was a big brouhaha over with the young man who was called the Scud Stud, handsome young man who reported the news while Scud missiles fell in the background. Now, CNN's coverage of the Gulf War marked a turning point in broadcast journalism. Unlike traditional news that followed daily bulletins, CNN aired live, continuous reports. On January 16, 1991, as Operation Desert Storm began, Millions tuned in to watch bombs explode in the skies over Baghdad, in real time, I might add. Bernard Shaw's iconic words echo through the television history. Something is happening outside. The skies over Baghdad have been illuminated. He and his colleagues ducked under tables and described the sounds of missiles and anti-aircraft fire and painted a tense portrait of war's front lines, all while broadcasting from the ninth floor of the Al Rashid Hotel. Their coverage won awards and admiration. But then the footage from other CNN reporters, supposedly in Saudi Arabia, started raising eyebrows. One segment featuring Charles Jaco, a CNN reporter claiming to be reporting from Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, became the focus of the fake war report theory. In that footage, Jaco and another CNN journalist, Carl Rochelle, deliver news updates while dressed in military vest and gas mask. But a number of odd details caught viewers' attention. The outdoor setting they were broadcasting from looked strangely like a soundstage. Ambient sound effects like birds and planes and sirens seemed somewhat artificial. And in one point, a boom mic briefly dipped into the frame. In some outtakes, Jaco appears to joke around between takes, swinging a gas mask and laughing with the crew. Well, this led conspiracy theorists to claim that CNN's Gulf War reports were filmed in Atlanta, not in the Middle East. They called it reality TV warfare. And that claim spread fast on early internet forums with freeze-framers and exposed breakdowns circulating widely. Now, CNN has never admitted to faking any wartime footage. According to the network, Charles Jaco and others were genuinely reporting from Saudi Arabia, broadcasting from CNN's outdoor setup near Bahrain Airport. The area was under potential threat from Iraqi Scud missiles, which justified their use of helmets and gas masks. The footage in question, including the off-air joking and backstage moments, was likely outtakes, never meant for broadcast. Like many field correspondents, reporters often relax between live shots, so they later surfaced online, stripped of context. Critics argued that even if the location was real, the overly theatrical presentation, complete with dramatic poses and props, blurred the line between journalism and performance. Whether or not the reports were fake, the controversy revealed a deeper truth. The Gulf War was the first conflict shaped not by bombs and troops, but also by broadcast optics. CNN's war coverage turned real-time conflict into a consumable television narrative, when it could be edited and dramatized and replayed. And this set the stage for future embedded journalism in Iraq and Afghanistan, where controlling the media's message became as vital as battlefield tactics. CNN's Gulf War footage boosted its viewership by 500%, helped turn it into a global news leader. Charles Jaco, the reporter at the center of the controversy, later dismissed the fake set claims as laughable, saying, "We were exhausted, cracking jokes, and yes, we were scared. But we were there." Footage from Jaco's broadcast is still used today in media literacy courses to illustrate how visual framing and props can influence viewer perception, even unintentionally. Well, it's interesting to note how many careers were made by those CNN reports. The Scud Stud, for one, went on to have quite a career before he faded into the background. Well, from war reporting, let's turn to the Weekly World News. It's 1992. American supermarket shelves were invaded by something bizarre. On the front page of the Weekly World News, which I used to read with great interest, was a black and white photo of a shrieking creature with pointed ears and razor-sharp teeth and wild eyes. According to the headline, Bat Boy found in a cave. It's grotesque. It was hilarious. And it was totally fake. But Bat Boy became a cultural phenomenon. Spawned dozens of articles, books, stage music, with even a loyal fan base. What started out as a spoof turned into one of the most enduring icons of tabloid absurdity. But how did this bat-eared gremlin become so beloved? Well, the Weekly World News was a strange publication from its beginning. Launched in 1979 by the same company behind the National Enquirer. used leftover black and white press capacity to print stories too weird, wild, or just plain made up for mainstream tabloids. They talked about aliens and Elvis sightings and three-headed babies. But in 1992, photo editor Turk and writer Bob Lynn came up with something special. They concocted a story about a mysterious half-human, half-bat creature discovered in a West Virginia cave. Stage photo showed a vampire-looking child with flared nostrils and bulging eyes, and the readers loved it. The issue sold hundreds of thousands of copies, and the team knew they had struck gold. Over the next decade, Weekly World News turned Bat Boy into its broad breakout star. Like a mutant Forrest Gump, he popped up in every major headline. Bat Boy joins the U.S. Marshals. Bat Boy captured by the FBI, escapes again. Bat Boy leads in the invasion of Iraq. That was my special favorite, don't you know? According to the tabloids' ongoing saga, Bat Boy was constantly on the run, either fleeing government scientists, saving humanity, or sometimes falling in love. Writers treated the character with a mix of sci-fi drama and campy humor. The longer the story went on, the more serialized it became. Fans eagerly awaited updates on each issue. The iconic image of Bat Boy wasn't generated by AI or CGI. It was a practical photo manipulation using early Photoshop techniques. The model for the original picture was a composite image with exaggerated features pasted over a child actor's face to create a howling expression. That photo became so famous it was printed on t-shirts and bumper stickers and posters. In the early 2000s, even inspired the off-Broadway musical called Bat Boy the Musical, which won awards and toured the country. Not bad for a tabloid creature born out of paste and parody. Now, Bat Boy was never real. I want to stress that. Nobody believed he was, but that wasn't the point. Like modern fake news, which often disguises itself in order to deceive, Bat Boy was proudly fake. A wink to readers who were in on the joke. In a way, it became a symbol of an era where media was strange, shameless, and self-aware. Today, Bat Boy enjoys a kind of cult status. Weekly World News ceased print publication in 2007, but the character lives on through reprints and social media and nostalgia-fueled merchandise. Some even call him America's Cryptid Lorette. The original Bat Boy image was created using real prosthetic teeth in Photoshop 3.0. Cutting edge at the time, don't you know? Bat Boy the Musical premiered in 1997. Been staged in over a dozen countries, including Japan and Germany. Fans once launched a write-in campaign to elect Bat Boy president during the 2004 U.S. election. Might have been a better selection than the one we got. Weekly World News claimed the boy had super strength, sonar powers, and could hang upside down. But he did have a soft spot for jelly beans, don't you know? Well, there's been a lot of media hoaxes over the years. One of my favorite involved the War of the Worlds, the broadcast that was said to have shaken America. It was the evening of October 30th, 1938. Americans across the country tuned their radios to CBS for the usual Sunday night entertainment. But what they heard that night wasn't music, it wasn't drama, it was terror. According to the broadcast, this was not a test. Martian cylinders have landed in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Military is powerless, cities are in flames, millions are dying. Well, the voice was calm but urgent. Sounded like a real news bulletin. Break it into scheduled programming. For some listeners, it felt like the world was actually ending. And the truth? Well, the truth was it was a radio play. A Halloween episode based on H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, directed and narrated by a 23-year-old genius named Orson Welles. What followed became one of the most enduring media legends of the 20th century. Interestingly enough, growing up, I knew some folks who had actually lived through that. They talked about their relatives getting in their pickup trucks with shotguns, and because you never want to invade a redneck area. And there are rednecks in New Jersey. But they were out there shooting at those water towers they thought were Martian landing ships. At the time of the broadcast, Wells was a rising star of radio and stage. His Mercury Theatre on the Air series was known for adapting classic literature into dramatic fashion. For their Halloween special, Wells chose The War of the Worlds but gave it a modern twist. Instead of being set in Victorian England, the Marshalls landed in 1930s America. And that story unfolded in real time as if listeners were hearing live news coverage. Well, the brilliance of the production was actually its format. After an opening monologue, the show mimicked a normal music broadcast, only to be interrupted by fake news reports. Panic field reporters, scientists at Princeton, and government officials, and dramatic sound effects of destruction. To listeners who missed the opening disclaimer, it all sounded horrifyingly real. For decades, according to the legend, a million Americans believed the invasion was real. People fled their homes, churches were packed with people praying, some even tried to shoot at water towers, thinking they were alien machines. But interestingly enough, modern research has actually challenged that narrative. In reality, it turns out most Americans weren't actually listening to CBS at all that night. They were tuned into Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy on NBC. Hugely popular comedy show. Turns out only a small fraction of the population actually heard Wells' broadcast. Idea of mass hysteria is largely pushed by newspapers the next day. And why might that be, you ask? Some historians believe the print media exaggerated the story to discredit radio, which was rapidly becoming a rival news source. Despite the limited reach, the broadcast did frighten some listeners. Newspapers reported hundreds of calls to police and radio stations. Some people reportedly packed their cars and fled to cities. In New Jersey, where the fictional invasion was set, a few towns actually saw a real alarm. But Orson Welles himself was stunned. At a press conference the next day, actually he looked shaken. He said, "I had no idea what caused such a reaction." But that panic, real or not, made him a national sensation. Within 2 years, he would direct Citizen Kane, still considered one of the greatest films of all time. Now, the first Martian landing and the broadcast occurred just 20 minutes into the show, after many listeners already tuned in late from another program. The supposed site of invasion, Grover's Mill, New Jersey, still commemorates the broadcast with a small monument and an annual Martian festival. Princeton astronomer Dr. Carl Sagan later said he admired the broadcast for sparking public interest in space and science fiction, even if it was all based on fear. Orson Welles later claimed he was nearly arrested after the show and feared his career was over. Instead, it skyrocketed. The War of the Worlds hoax became a textbook case for journalism and media studies, cited in debates about public gullibility and media responsibility. Now, the War of the Worlds radio broadcast wasn't just a Hollywood prank. It was a masterclass in storytelling, performance, and raw power of media. Whether it truly caused panic or not, it reveals something deeper. Yet the line between fact and fiction, especially in the age of technology, is dangerously thin. And in a world increasingly shaped by screens and sound waves, Wells' Martians were just the beginning. Well, there's no saying that I've heard for years. History's written by the winners, but sometimes it's actually forged by the desperate. We're going to talk about how fabricated documents have become weapons of legitimacy, reshaped empires, religions, and entire civilizations. We'll start out talking about the very famous document in religion, the donation of Constantine. Now, for centuries, the Catholic Church claimed a divine right to rule over vast territories and wield immense secular power. And one of the cornerstones of that authority came from a document so sacred, so significant, that few dared to question its authenticity. Called the donation of Constantine, and it was actually a forgery. This single fraudulent document helped legitimize the Pope's control over large parts of Europe, bolstered the Church's political power for nearly 1,000 years. Its exposures of fake would later help fuel revolutions, not just in theology, but in thought and politics and in history itself. According to the donation of Constantine, Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, who reigned during the early 4th century, gave control of the Western Roman Empire to Pope Sylvester I as a gesture of gratitude. And the reason for this Massive gift. Constantine is supposedly been cured of leprosy by the Pope, and to show of pious humility, decided to transfer imperial authority over Rome and the entire Western world to the papacy. Document states that Constantine granted the Pope and his successors dominion over the city of Rome and all the provinces, districts, and cities of Italy and the western regions. He declared the Pope as supreme above all other bishops and church officials, effectively making the papacy the most powerful institution in Christendom. Well, this gift, according to the document, was irrevocable. There was just one problem. Constantine didn't write it. For much of the Middle Ages, the donation was taken at face value. Popes cited it frequently when asserting their authority over kings and emperors, used as a foundation for the church's claim to political and territorial rule, including the vast papal states. During disputes between church and state from Charlemagne to the Holy Roman Emperors, the document was invoked as divine and a legal precedent. And since few people in medieval Europe had access to the skills, education, or daring to question church authority, the document lay largely unchallenged. It wasn't just accepted. Oh no, it was actually foundational. Turning point came in the 15th century during the dawn of the Renaissance. A new movement of scholars known as humanists began digging deeper into the ancient text with a critical eye. Among them was Lorenzo Valla, an Italian priest, philologist, and rhetorical genius. 1440 published a treatise that stunned the intellectual world. It was titled The False and Forged Donation of Constantine. Using linguistic analysis, he proved the Latin used in the document was from centuries after Constantine's time. Certain phrases and structures simply didn't exist in the 4th century. Terminology was all wrong, more medieval than Roman. In short, it was impossible for Constantine to have written it. His conclusion was the document was a fake. You might think such a revelation would shake the Catholic Church to its core, but the Vatican didn't immediately react with outrage or confession. Instead, they largely ignored it. Valla's foundings were quietly suppressed for decades. But the damage had been done. The idea that sacred authority could rest on forged documents became a powerful weapon for reformers. Later thinkers, especially during the Protestant Reformation, used the donation as evidence of the church's worldly corruption. Even Martin Luther, who launched the Reformation in 1517, pointed to the donation of Constantine as one of the many examples of deception and manipulation by church hierarchy. By the time the 16th and 17th century rolls around, a few serious scholars believed the document was authentic. Now, the donation of Constantine was never just a historical curiosity. It was a political tool. It helped justify centuries of papal rule over not just spiritual matters, but lands and armies and governments. Entire regions were conquered or defended on the basis of its supposed legitimacy. Its eventual exposure didn't immediately strip the church of power, but it became one more thread pulled from a tightly woven fabric of unquestioned authority, and over time, more threads unraveled. The donation was actually included in the Gratian Decretum, one of the most important collections of canon law in the 12th century. Gave it legal weight for hundreds of years. Lorenzo Valla's manuscript was rediscovered and widely circulated by Protestant reformers a century later. After it was disproven, popes continued to act as though the donation had granted them secular power, until the papal states were actually absorbed by Italy in the 19th century. The donation of Constantine is a powerful reminder that even the most revered documents can be forged. The consequence of a lie can shape continents. It demonstrates how myths, when told convincingly and backed by power, can rewrite history. And sometimes it takes a quiet scholar with a sharp pen to start telling the truth. You never know what's going to pop up when you start poking and prodding. You know, another lie actually fueled a century of hate. I'm talking about the protocols of the elders of Zion. In the early 20th century, a mysterious document began to circulate across Europe and the world, claimed to be the minutes of a secret meeting of powerful Jewish leaders outlining their plan to dominate global finance, control the media, undermine Christian values, and eventually take over the world. It's called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Well, it was used by a lot of people for a lot of uses. It was actually a complete fabrication. And despite being exposed as a hoax over 100 years ago, the protocols have had a deadly legacy. influencing dictators and fueling genocides and embedding conspiracy theories that still echo in the dark corners of the internet today. The protocols first appeared in print in 1903 in the Russian Empire, published in a newspaper called Znamya, the Banner, presented as hard evidence of an international Jewish conspiracy. According to the document, Jewish leaders had allegedly convened in secret to plot a step-by-step strategy for taking over global governments, banking systems, education, and culture. In reality, the protocols were plagiarized almost entirely from early political satire. French political writer Maurice Joly had written a fictional dialogue in 1864 called Dialogue in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu, which criticized Napoleon III's authoritarian rule. Russian operatives, like the members of the secret police, the Ograna in those days, copied large portions of Joly's work and altered the characters, replacing Machiavelli's authoritarian figure with the elders of Zion. In other words, the world domination plot was lifted directly from a book meant to warn against tyranny, not promote conspiracy. Most historians argue that the protocols are fabricated by Russian agents or sympathizers of the Tsarist regime during a period of increased social unrest. The Russian Empire at the time was plagued by revolutionaries and anti-monarchist movements and ethnic tensions. By inventing a foreign enemy, in this particular case the Jews, the regime could redirect public anger and distract from its own failings. And the hoax was effective, no question about it. The protocols quickly spread across Eastern Europe, became a rallying cry for anti-Semitic violence, especially during pogroms in Russia and Ukraine. But the impact didn't stop there. Oh no. After the Russian Revolution in 1917, protocols gained renewed attention among the anti-communists who linked Bolshevism to Jewish influence. In the 1920s, the text was translated into multiple languages and found eager audiences in Germany, France, and Britain, even in the U.S. In the U.S., industrialist Henry Ford financed a wide distribution of the protocols through his newspaper, the Dearborn Independent. His 1920s publication, International Jew, sold hundreds of thousands of copies and gave legitimacy to the hoax in American public life. But nowhere did the protocols do more damage than in Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler cited the protocols in Mein Kampf and used them as a justification for his racial ideology. Nazi propaganda repeatedly referred to the text as proof that Jews are plotting against Germany and humanity itself. By the 1930s, the protocols were required reading in German schools and Nazi training programs. They weren't just background noise, they were a central part of the ideological foundation for the Holocaust. And even after World War II, the document didn't disappear. In 1921, journalist Philip Graves of the Times of London published a thorough expose proving the protocols were plagiarized from Joly's satirical work. Multiple investigations since then, including by historians, courts, and religious leaders, have confirmed the document's fraudulent origins, but it still endures. Protocols have been repeatedly published in parts of the Middle East, used by extremist groups, and even cited by political figures to this day. The internet only accelerated its reach, with conspiracy theorists continuing to push the false narrative of a Jewish world conspiracy, often repackaged into modern forms. In 1935, a Swiss court ruled the protocols to be a political forgery and plagiarism during the libel trial in Bern. Henry Ford later issued a public apology in 1927, but only under pressure. He never personally disavowed the protocols. United Nations and European Union have officially condemned the document as anti-Semitic hate speech. Scholars believe the protocols directly inspired parts of Hitler's final solution and continue to be used by Holocaust deniers. Well, the protocols of the elders of Zion is more than a lie. It's a weaponized hoax. Its power came not from truth, but from fear, ignorance, and the willingness of people to believe what suited their prejudice. That forged document reminds us that disinformation, when left unchecked, can have horrific consequences. We've seen that in the mainstream media, not just for individuals, for entire civilizations. Understanding its origins and exposing its falsehood remains a necessary step in confronting the ideologies of hate. Well, from a false document, let's talk about how a fictional spy actually fooled Europe for over 100 years. In 1684, a book appeared in Paris that claimed to be a collection of private letters written by a Muslim spy embedded in Christian Europe. The author, who went by the name of Mahmud the Arabian, purported to be a Turkish observer stationed in France under orders from the Ottoman Sultan. And what was his mission? To report on the politics, religion, and daily life of European society, spying from the heart of Christendom for the glory of the Sultan's court in Constantinople. And these letters, addressed to high-ranking officials in the Ottoman Empire, were filled with sharp insight, cultural observations, and caustic wit. They commented freely on the Catholic Church, French monarchy, and philosophical ideas, then sweeping through Europe. Even more alluring, they were written in an elegant literary style that seemed to offer a rare window into how the Muslim world perceived the West. And though it gained a lot of attention, there was just one problem. Mahmud the Arabian never existed. For over 100 years, Letters of a Turkish Spy was read and quoted as if it were a real document, authentic intelligence from an outsider's perspective. First 7 volumes appeared in France between 1684 and 1687. An 8th volume appeared in 1694. And the books became a sensation across Europe, translated into multiple languages and widely discussed by intellectuals and statesmen alike. Readers are captivated by Mahmud's wily commentary. He criticized European hypocrisy, religious intolerance, and political absurdities. Also praised certain Western innovations. He sounded plausible, erudite, and at times unnervingly prophetic. Enlightenment thinkers even cited his letters as evidence of how Europeans were perceived abroad. Everything went well until in the 18th century, scholars began to seriously question, was Mahmud a real person at all? As historians dug deeper, inconsistencies began to pile up. The knowledge he displayed of intercourt life in France seemed too intimate, too literary, and too well-informed for somebody supposedly writing in exile. And the language and philosophical tone felt unmistakably European. Eventually, fingers began pointing at Jean-Baptiste Delacroix, also known as Count d'Argens, French author and philosopher with a flair for pseudonyms and satire. Later investigation identified the likely true author as Giovanni Paolo Marana, an Italian political exile who lived in France during the 1680s. Marana had good reason for anonymity. He'd once been imprisoned for withholding information about a conspiracy in Genoa, and when he was released, he moved to France, where he likely wrote the letters not as despised reports, but as philosophical fiction disguised as espionage. The epistolary format, a collection of fictional letters, was a popular literary device at the time, offering authors a way to explore controversial ideas under a veil of objectivity. By presenting critiques of European society through the eyes of a fictional Muslim, Marana could expose social hypocrisy, criticize church corruption, and poke fun at kings, all while claiming it was merely the opinion of a foreigner. Whether or not readers believed in Mahmud's existence, the letters became enormously influential. Voltaire admired the format, and Montesquieu's Persian letters, another fictional exchange between foreign travelers observing Europe, was directly inspired by Marana's work. Even the British writer Daniel Defoe borrowed elements from his letters written by a Turkish spy at Paris. What had started as a subtle hoax became a lasting literary tradition. The fictional foreigner peering into European life became a device used for social critique and satire and philosophical reflection for centuries. And for decades, European readers debated Mahmud's identity, some insisting he was a real Ottoman agent, others proposing he was a Jesuit in disguise. That ambiguity only added to the book's mystique and to its sales, I might add. Giovanni Paolo Marana may have been inspired by his own experiences of political exile. Some scholars argue that Letters of a Turkish Spy was his way of expressing frustration with European power structures, safely hidden behind the mask of an Eastern outsider. The letters offered surprisingly progressive commentary for the time, including criticism of colonialism and slavery and religious persecution. These themes made it popular among Enlightenment readers. The book was such success that forgeries and sequels proliferated, some written by other authors who extended Mahmud's story. At least 12 volumes are eventually attributed to the character, most posthumously or even fraudulently. Well, now we've got something that has enough reality to become puzzling. The Piri Reis map, a 16th century chart that shouldn't exist. In 1929, a group of scholars made an astonishing discovery in the archives of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. Among the dusty scrolls of the Ottoman Empire, they discovered a fragment of a world map dated 1513, drawn on gazelle skin by an Ottoman admiral named Pili Reis. First glance, it seemed just like another early modern map, but then the questions began. How did a map from 1513 actually depict parts of South America, Africa, and most controversially, what some claim is Antarctica, centuries before these continents were fully explored? Was this map simply ahead of its time, or did it preserve ancient knowledge lost to history? Well, to study that map, you have to know who Piri Reis was. He was an experienced sailor, cartographer, naval commander in the Ottoman Empire. Born in 1465, we think, he served in Mediterranean campaigns and compiled extensive knowledge of geography from the sailors and maps and explorers across Europe and the Middle East. 1513, he created a map that would survive as only a fragment, 1/3 of the original, don't you know? But it remains astonishing. He even left notes in the margins of the map explaining and used 20 different source maps, including some from ancient times, allegedly one from Christopher Columbus himself. The surviving section of the Piri Reis map shows the western coast of Europe and Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and what draws the most controversy is the southern portion. A landmass that some believe is Antarctica will appear without its ice sheet. Well, the strange details include a coastline that appears similar to Queen Maud Land in a region of East Antarctica. Detailed contours and features not officially mapped to the 20th century, and then only through seismic data beneath the ice. And a clear suggestion the southern continent was known long before its discovery in 1820. Piri Reis' map has fueled decades of speculation. Among the most popular theories, some fringe theories argue that the map reflects knowledge from a long-lost civilization such as Atlantis or a pre-Ice Age maritime culture. And if that's true, this would suggest humans had accurate global knowledge over 10,000 years ago. Timeline not supported by mainstream archaeology. Others believe the map may have incorporated information from ancient Greek or Roman geographers such as Ptolemy, whose works were rediscovered during the Renaissance. More conventional explanation is that early Portuguese and Spanish explorers may have charted more of the South American coast and possibly seen landmass far to the south, long before it was officially recorded. And this data was passed on to Piri Reis. Mainstream historians are skeptical of the Antarctic history. Misinterpretations show a lot of experts argue the landmass is simply an exaggerated or distorted South America or mythological southern continent known as Terra Australis, common in maps of the period. Geological evidence shows Antarctica had been ice-free for millions of years, making the ice-free depiction impossible, unless by some form of seismic survey, which didn't exist at the time. Early maps often had unusual projections, blending myth and hearsay and guesswork. The coastline resemblance may have been a coincidence. The map was drawn using Portolian charts, medieval navigational maps based on compass directions, estimated distances by sea. Piri Reis wrote a famous book of navigation called the Kitabi Biraya, describing coastlines and harbors and maritime hazards of the Mediterranean. The map is often cited by proponents of the ancient astronauts theory, who claim that alien visitors left advanced geographic knowledge on Earth. Only 1/3 of the original world map has survived, and the rest remains lost to history. Piri Reis' map is a fascinating historical artifact, a snapshot of how early 16th century cartographers viewed the world, blending fact and legend and inherited wisdom from its many sources. Whether or not it shows an ice-free Antarctica remains a symbol of humanity's quest to understand the globe long before satellites or GPS existed. What makes it most compelling isn't what it gets right or wrong, but it shows how a global web of forgotten knowledge passed from civilization to civilization, ultimately inked on the skin of a gazelle by a curious sailor dared to draw the world as he knew it. It does leave a lot of interesting questions. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. Be back tomorrow, and once again, if you're listening to Ken Hudnall and the Ken Hudnall Show. Until then, have a truly great evening.